The alarms tore through the stale air of the biolab like an urgent heartbeat gone awry. Serena's hands flew across the console, her breath shallow and rapid, eyes darting between flashing screens that displayed creeping tendrils snaking through the ventilation shafts. The once orderly layout of the lab was now a battlefield. Mutated vines pulsated against reinforced glass, their bioluminescent hues casting a sickly green pallor over everything. Panic rippled through the control room, thick and suffocating, as the team scrambled to respond. Alara stood rooted near the entrance, her jaw clenched, her mind racing through protocols and contingencies that now seemed woefully inadequate. The verdant menace was no longer a mere experiment. It was a sentient force, and it was unraveling the fragile order they had painstakingly built. But amid the external chaos, a deeper, more insidious fracture was taking hold within their ranks. She caught Milo's gaze across the room, sharp, calculating, and colder than before. His usual cautious demeanor had morphed into something darker, more desperate. He wasn't just worried about the plants anymore. He seemed to be preparing for a battle against his own team. Later, in the hydroponics bay, the tension ignited. The bay, once a sanctuary of controlled growth, was now twisted and alien. Bioluminescent vines writhed silently behind the glass walls, their eerie green glows flickering with the rising voices of Alara and Milo. "You were pushing us toward ruin," Milo snapped, his voice low but fierce. "Your idealism is a luxury we can't afford. We need containment, not negotiation." Alara's eyes burned with a mix of frustration and sorrow. "Containment is a fantasy now. We're already past that point. What we have is a choice, fight or understand." Milo's face twisted in anger. Fight means survival. Understanding means death. Their argument spiraled, a clash of philosophies amid the pulsing heart of the lab. The plants outside seemed to listen, their silent presence a reminder of the stakes. Meanwhile, Lina knelt beside a shattered terrarium, her fingers trembling as she traced the edges of a mutated bloom that pulsed faintly under her touch. Her bright eyes reflected a sorrowful hope, pleading silently with the flora for peace. "We don't have to be enemies," she whispered, voice barely audible over the distant alarms. "There's still a chance for coexistence." But the fractures were deepening. Milo's covert actions soon came to light, sabotage of critical containment systems, designed to force a hard reset of the experiment by any means necessary. The betrayal hit the team like a shockwave, fracturing trust and igniting paranoia. In the solitude of her quarters, Alara sat beside the small plant specimen she kept as a reminder of what was at stake. The pot was cracked, the leaves trembling ever so slightly. She whispered to it, a litany of guilt and desperation, her voice breaking the silence. How did we lose our way? The betrayal was a crucible, exposing the raw edges of human fear and ambition. As alliances shattered and hope flickered precariously, Alara realized that survival demanded more than scientific expertise. It required confronting the darkest impulses within themselves. Outside, the verdant mind pulsed and waited, its collective intelligence sensing the unraveling threads of human resolve. The seeds of betrayal had been sown, and the outcome of this struggle would shape the future of the lab and perhaps the very definition of life itself. But even in the depths of despair, a fragile ember of hope persisted. For if humanity could learn to face its own shadows, might it still find a way to coexist with the wild, sentient growth it had unleashed? The question hung in the heavy air, unanswered, as the lab held its breath beneath the choking tendrils of the synthetic Eden. The sterile hum of the lab's ventilation filled the small confines of my quarters as I sat motionless, fingers lightly tracing the delicate veins of the tiny plant specimen resting on my desk. It was the only living thing I allowed myself to tend to these days, a fragile reminder of what was once under my control and what I had failed to contain. The chlorophyll-stained leaves shimmered faintly under the dim light, shadows dancing as the bulb flickered, casting an eerie glow that matched the turmoil swirling within me. Memories that I had long tried to suppress surged forward unbidden, The sterile corridors of the other lab, the sharp scent of antiseptic, the sudden explosion of alarms. And then the silence, my sibling's last breath lost to a lab accident that had forever altered the course of my life. It was that loss that had driven me here, to this domed sanctuary where we sought to push the boundaries of life itself. Yet now, as I sat enveloped by the creeping green outside my window, I questioned whether my pursuit of control was a cruel illusion. The door hissed open softly, a familiar presence entering the room. Lina Park's calm demeanor was a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. She approached quietly, her bright eyes steady with an unspoken resolve. "Alara," she began, voice gentle but resolute, "we can't keep fighting what we don't understand. These plants, they were not just growths gone wild. They're recommunicating, evolving. Maybe they're re-asking for something. Maybe we need to listen." Her words struck a chord, a fragile bud of hope in the dense forest of my doubt. Yet, even as I nodded, part of me recoiled. Was I ready to surrender the reins to something so alien? Could coexistence truly be an option, or was it a dangerous fantasy that would lead to our destruction? Later, the lab's common area became a battleground of ideologies. Milo Jensen's voice cut sharply through the thick tension. "We were risking everything by entertaining this madness," he said, eyes blazing with a mixture of fear and anger. "We built this place to contain and control, not to become hosts to some green nightmare. We need to eradicate the threat before it's too late." I met his gaze, the weight of leadership pressing down on me. And if we destroy them, what then? Do we condemn ourselves to repeat the same mistakes, blind to what new forms life might take? Around us, the subtle rustle of leaves pressed against reinforced glass reminded us all that the lab was no longer ours alone. The plants outside shimmered with bioluminescent hues, their presence a constant, unnerving reminder of the shifting power balance. Raj Patel adjusted his glasses, interjecting with technical concerns about containment failures and data irregularities. His detached tone underscored the growing chasm between scientific detachment and the emotional realities we faced. That night I found myself alone again, poring over genetic sequences projected in vibrant greens and blues onto the glass walls surrounding my workspace. The patterns pulsed and shifted, mirroring the living labyrinth outside. I realized that the plants were not just evolving biologically, but were entwining with the very fabric of our technology, our sanctuary. This merging of organic and synthetic blurred the lines I had once believed were clear. My scientific rationality wrestled with an emotional reckoning I could no longer deny. The vines creeping along the walls were no longer merely flora, they were veins of a new consciousness, pulsing with life that challenged every principle I held dear. I whispered aloud to the empty room, "What have we done?" A silence followed, broken only by the distant, almost melodic rustle of leaves, a song of forbidden growth, and the uncertain future it heralded. As dawn's first light filtered through the dome, the questions remained. Would I find the strength to lead us through this uncharted wilderness, not with the illusion of control, but with the humility to embrace the unknown? And in that choice, could there be hope for both humanity and this new Eden burgeoning in the shadows? The path ahead was shrouded in doubt, yet somewhere within the tangled veins of fear and hope, a fragile truth awaited discovery. I had to find it before the green claimed us all. But even as I resolved to face the coming storm, a quiet voice in the back of my mind whispered a warning. Some roots run deeper than we ever imagined, and not all growth is meant to be pruned. The air inside the heart of the biolab was thick, humid, and alive with a soft, almost imperceptible pulse. Alara Voss took a steadying breath, the faint scent of chlorophyll and damp earth clinging to her skin, mingling with the sterile tang of the lab's filtered atmosphere. Here, in the epicenter of the verdant mind's domain, the rules she had lived by for years seemed to blur and dissolve. Gone were the cold, clinical white corridors she once knew. In their place, a cathedral of living green and shifting light stretched upward, vines weaving intricate patterns overhead, leaves glowing with bioluminescent hues, blues, greens and faint purples that pulsed softly like a heartbeat. Every step Alara took was measured, her boots barely making a sound on the mossy floor that had overtaken the polished surfaces. She could feel it beneath her, the subtle vibrations coursing through the synthetic soil. A language of movement and tension she was only beginning to understand. The verdant mind was here, it was watching, waiting. She tightened her grip on the small device in her hand, a modulator she and Lena had cobbled together in desperation. It emitted gentle pulses of light and low-frequency hums, designed to mimic the signaling patterns of the plants, but modulated enough to be interpreted as an attempt at communication. Alara's heart hammered against her ribs. This was uncharted territory, no precedent, no guarantee of safety. The verdant mind was no mere organism. It was a collective consciousness, alien in its perceptions and motives. Alara, Lena's voice crackled softly through the comm link. "Are you sure about this?" "We have no choice," Alara replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "If we don't try to understand it, we're doomed to fight blindly." As Alara knelt, she extended the device slowly towards a cluster of glowing flowers. They shimmered, petals fluttering like delicate wings, responding in pulses that matched the modulator's rhythm. The light intensified, bathing Alara's face in an eerie glow. The plants here weren't just reacting, they were engaging. The verdant mind's presence surged, a wave of sensation that was at once alien and deeply familiar. It was not a voice, not in the way humans understood it, but a complex symphony of rustling leaves, shifting luminescence, and vibrations felt through the earth itself. Alara closed her eyes, reaching out with her mind, searching for a thread of understanding. Images flickered in the shadows behind her eyelids, sprawling forests untouched by time, roots intertwining with forgotten machines, a vast intelligence growing beyond the confines of the dome. The verdant mind was curious, cautious, and perhaps, for the first time, willing to listen. She opened her eyes to see the vines parting slowly, creating a pathway. A single flower, larger than the others and glowing with an intense blue light, hovered inches from her hand. Alara hesitated, then reached out, her fingers trembling as they brushed against the delicate petals. A shiver ran through her, a connection sparked, fragile but real. "Lena," she whispered, it's responding. From the comm link, Lena's voice was a whisper of disbelief and hope. This could change everything. But the moment was fragile. The verdant mind's light flickered, pulsing erratically as if warning of the risks still lurking beneath this tentative truce. Alara's mind reeled with the ethical weight of what she was doing, negotiating with a life form born from their own hubris, a force that could either annihilate them or redefine existence itself. Time stretched and folded in this surreal exchange. The lab's artificial lighting dimmed, surrendering to the verdant mind's bioluminescence that bathed the chamber in shifting shades of green and blue. It was an alien cathedral, a sanctuary of forbidden growth, where science and nature converged in a dance of light and shadow. Alara felt her own boundaries blur. The scientist's rationality wrestled with the primal awe of standing face to face with something utterly other. Could they find harmony? Could humanity coexist with this alien intelligence that had sprung from their own hands? The verdant mind pulsed once more, a gentle crescendo of light and sound, a question without words. Alara swallowed hard, the weight of the future pressing down like the vines surrounding her. "We want to understand," she said softly, "and live alongside you." The plants shimmered in response, a moment suspended between fear and hope, destruction and rebirth. But as the lab held its breath, Alara knew this fragile negotiation was only the beginning. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with peril and possibility. And in the heart of the Green Cathedral, she was no longer just a scientist, she was a bridge between two worlds, tasked with navigating the uncharted territory of coexistence with the forbidden growth they had unleashed. The quiet hum of the modulator faded, leaving only the soft rustle of leaves and the steady pulse of bioluminescence. Alara's eyes met the glowing flower once more, and in that luminous gaze, she saw the fragile promise of a new Eden, a synthetic Eden born from the tangled roots of fear, hope, and understanding. But the question remained, echoing in the depths of her mind: could they truly share this world, or was this truce merely the calm before an inevitable storm? Alara's fingers tightened around the device. Whatever came next, she would face it not as a conqueror, but as a witness to the wild, untamable force they had awakened. And that was enough to keep her moving forward into the unknown. The air inside the domed biolaboratory felt heavier than ever, thick with tension and the unmistakable scent of damp foliage that crept through every crack and vent. The luminescent glow from the mutated plants cast eerie shadows across the faces of the gathered scientists, illuminating the cracks that had begun to fracture their unity. I stood between them, caught in the eye of a storm I had helped unleash and now desperately sought to calm. Milo's voice cut through the low murmur of discontent like a sharp blade. "Alara, we cannot afford this idealism. These plants, this verdant mind, it's a threat. We should be eradicating it before it's too late." His tone was not just firm. It was edged with fear, a fear that had hardened into something near paranoia. I saw it in his eyes. The man who once trusted me implicitly now doubted if we could ever contain what we created. Lina, standing opposite him with her notebook clutched tightly, shook her head. "Milo, we don't understand the full extent of this intelligence yet. We can't just destroy it without knowing what it means. There's a chance for coexistence here, a new form of life that we could learn from, maybe even thrive alongside." Her voice was calm but resolute, a beacon of hope amidst the growing storm. The rest of the team was split, some nodding in agreement with Milo's caution, others drawn to Lina's cautious optimism. Even Raj and Serena, usually quiet and focused on their tasks, were drawn into the swirling debate. Raj's fingers twitched nervously as he monitored the failing systems, while Serena's eyes flicked between the arguing scientists and the creeping tendrils visible through the observation windows. I raised my hands, desperate to hold the fragile peace. Enough. We're losing focus. The flora is evolving faster than we anticipated, and this division isn't helping us. We need a plan that balances our survival with the reality of what we're facing. My voice was steadier than I felt, but inside a storm raged. The verdant mind wasn't just a threat, it was a mirror reflecting our deepest fears and desires, a challenge to our very understanding of life. Outside the reinforced glass, the vines pulsed with bioluminescent light, their movements almost deliberate, as if they were listening, watching. The verdant mind was no longer a distant concept, it was here, in every tendril and every bloom, shaping the environment and, increasingly, our fate. Tensions erupted when Milo's faction began fortifying the main lab entrance with makeshift barricades, repurposing equipment into weapons and reinforcing doors with metal panels. Lina's group protested, advocating for observation and restraint, fearing that aggressive actions would provoke the plants further. Their voices clashed, the air thick with accusations and fear. I moved between them, trying to mediate, to remind them what was at stake. But the fractures ran deep. Milo accused Lina of jeopardizing the team with her idealism. Lina countered that Milo's paranoia threatened to destroy everything we had built. Arguments spiraled into shouting matches, and soon the lab itself felt like a battlefield. In the corridors, roots twisted around pipes and cables, blocking paths and strangling vital systems. Serena and Raj worked frantically, their hands stained with sticky sap as they tried to patch broken circuits and restore environmental controls. Their whispered bickering over priorities underscored the growing desperation. I retreated to my quarters, the only sanctuary left untouched by the verdant mind's reach. Sitting beside the small plant specimen I kept there, I let out a heavy breath. The room was quiet except for the faint rustle of leaves and the distant hum of the lab's failing systems. Alone, I faced the crushing weight of leadership, fractured loyalty, dwindling trust, and the impossible choice between eradication and coexistence. I thought of my lost sibling, the ghost that haunted every cautious step I took. This experiment was my redemption and my curse. Now, more than ever, I understood that our survival depended not just on science or strength, but on whether we could find common ground, even with the alien intelligence we had birthed. As the night deepened, the lab pulsed with life and conflict. The verdant mind's influence seeped into every corner, challenging us, testing our resolve. The green divide was no longer just ideological. It was physical, a fault line running through the heart of our sanctuary. And I was left to hold the pieces, fragile, splintered, but still ours to find a way forward before it was too late. Outside, beyond the thick panes of glass, the vines writhed with an almost predatory grace, their glowing flowers lighting the darkness like sinister stars. Inside, the echoes of fractured voices and pounding hearts filled the spaces between us. In this crucible of green and steel, the battle was no longer just for control of the lab, it was for the very meaning of life itself. And as I stared into the luminous depths of the verdant mind's domain, I knew the coming days would test everything I believed, everything we were. The green divide was a chasm we had to bridge or fall into. The question that haunted me as I closed my eyes was simple yet profound. Could we truly find harmony in a world we no longer fully understood? Or were we doomed to destroy what we feared most ourselves? The air inside the domed bio-laboratory was thick with the scent of damp earth and chlorophyll, a heavy reminder of how far the verdant mind had stretched its roots into every corner of our sanctuary. As I crouched behind a wall of glowing vines, their bioluminescent pulses casting shifting shadows on my face, I felt the weight of every decision pressing down like the humid air itself. "Milo Lina, listen up," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the distant, ominous hum of the plant's restless movement. "We move on my mark. Keep the path clear and avoid any unnecessary damage. Remember, our goal is to reclaim, not to destroy." Milo's jaw clenched, his eyes scanning the darkened corridor beyond the veil of leaves and tendrils. His military training was invaluable, but I saw the tension in his grip on the makeshift spear he'd fashioned from a broken pipe and some stripped wiring. Lina, holding her notebook like a talisman, nodded solemnly, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the storm raging in my mind. The verdant mind's presence was palpable here, every tendril, every bloom seemed alive with purpose, watching, waiting. The once sterile metal corridors had transformed into twisting arboreal labyrinths, where the very walls breathed and shifted. We moved cautiously, each step a negotiation with an ecosystem that defied all our assumptions. Navigating a narrow passage, I felt the prick of thorns brushing against my forearm. Their tips pulsed softly, a hypnotic green glow that seemed almost sentient. I swallowed my apprehension and pressed forward, the vines parting reluctantly, as if allowing a guest passage while marking territory with silent warnings. The ambient light flickered, as if the plants themselves were considering our presence, calculating our intentions. Lina paused near a cluster of glowing spores hanging like lanterns from a twisted branch. From her pack, she retrieved a small device emitting gentle rhythmic pulses, a tentative olive branch offered in the language of bioelectric signals. Carefully, she placed it among the spores, her eyes reflecting a fragile hope. "If we can't destroy them," she murmured, "maybe we can speak." Her words hung in the air, fragile yet potent. I wanted to believe her, to embrace the possibility that this forbidden growth could be reasoned with. But the reality of our situation was harsh. Milo's voice cut through the moment, sharp and urgent. "Alara, movement ahead. Something's coming." We scrambled into the shadows as a mass of thick vines surged forward, their bioluminescent veins glowing fiercely. I could hear the rasping sound of leaves scraping metal, and the subtle crackle of organic matter breaking free from its constraints. Milo raised his spear, the tension in his muscles coiling like a spring. "Hold," I commanded, pulling the team back just as the vines swept past, narrowly missing us. The verdant mind was testing us, probing for weakness. After the encounter, our path led us to a control panel half swallowed by creeping roots. Miller wasted no time, his hands steady despite the grime and sweat smeared across his face from the battle. With a grunt, he pried away the tangled growth, exposing the interface beneath. "This should give us a foothold," he said, fingers flying over the controls. The lights flickered to life, and for a moment, the hum of technology blended with the natural chorus of the lab's green heart. We had won a small victory, a testament to the fragile alliance between human ingenuity and the wild, unpredictable force that had taken root in our home. Yet the cost was clear. We remained vulnerable, our unity tested by fear and the ever-present question, could we truly coexist with what we had created? Or were we merely delaying an inevitable reckoning? As we regrouped, I looked at my team faces drawn but resolute. The fronts of resistance we had mustered were just the beginning. Ahead lay uncertainty, but also the faint, stubborn glow of hope. And in that glow, I found the strength to lead us forward. "This isn't over," I said quietly. "But today we take back our Eden, one leaf at a time." The vines seemed to pulse in response, as if acknowledging the challenge. The battle for the soul of the biolab had entered its next phase, a delicate dance between destruction and creation, control and surrender. And I knew deep down that whatever came next would change us all forever.